Hello and welcome to what has been a very exciting and explosive Friday. Prime Minister, of course, came out and repealed the three farm laws at 9 a.m. or 9:30 a.m. whenever he had the address. And I'm joined by two people. One is, of course, a class oppressor who joins us very often with his elitist commentary. Thank you so much for joining us, Abhijit. And then we also have someone who who is a doctorate on farming laws, which is I didn't know this, huh? I found out today. And this gentleman is somebody that you'll recognize, but you've never seen. He's never been introduced this way. So may I request my producer to put him on the screen? There he is.
Namaste.
Namaste and welcome, MRV. Congratulations on your book. It's doing really well from
Yes.
all reports that I've heard, and really appreciate you joining us finally on
Yes.
this humble YouTube channel and not on prime time. So, Abhijit, everyone's waiting for you to explode. So, I'm going to give you the stage to explode for exactly 3 minutes, and then we'll go on to discussing the topic.
See, I'm not going to explode because Modi just lived up to exactly what I expected of him. He's been a serial work shirker and class bunker when it comes to internal security, and he's just proved that over and over again. Remember, Godhra wasn't a crime of commission, it was an error of omission. And this is a man who's incapable of learning, so he's never learned. You know, he allowed the Selampur riots to fester, which then became Shaheen Bagh, which he allowed to fester, which then became the Delhi riots, which he allowed to fester, which then became a US government condemnation of India, which he allowed to go unchallenged. With the farm riots, he didn't crush them when they started uprooting telephone poles. He didn't crush them when they started blocking roads. He didn't crush them when they started when they desecrated the national flag and the Red Fort on Republic Day. This man is a serial bungler on internal security. He's very good on external security, so I don't know why he does this on internal security. But this has been a classic trait of him and his cabinet, his advisors, and his government, not for the last 10 years, but for the last 20 years, pretty much. Uh, the question is, why did we ever allow ourselves to expect any more from him? Now, that by itself isn't the issue. The issue is how this intersects with Khalistan. And Khalistan is one more thing. You know, in my former employer, we used to travel to Canada very often to keep tabs on Khalistani terror after the MacDonald Laurier Institute, started by the Conservative Party out there, started giving us very alarming info on what was happening there. Namely, the Khalistani ISI alliance had been in place for almost 30, 40 years, which is why the jihadis never attacked the Sikhs in Kashmir, except maybe that one massacre that happened, which was an aberration. Why? Because they wanted to keep both terrorist movements alive. And what then happened was the Canadians had started realizing that instead of the ISI funding the Khalistanis were now funding the ISI, saying, we will be the donors, you do the fighting and dying. And that slowly escalated into a soft takeover of British Labour after they took over Canadian Labour. You know, in Canadian Labour, they were literally, the Khalistanis were beating up primary candidates, Sikh candidates who were moderate, literally beating them up and throwing them out of the election physically at the primaries. The Indian embassy did nothing about it. For 10 years, the Indian embassy did absolutely squat about it, even though we went on sounding alarm bells. Ultimately, the Kartarpur corridor opening, everybody warned that it was a Trojan horse, and that's exactly what it turned out to be. Today, who has been appeased? That same little Jatsi clique that has gone around slaughtering Ravi Dasias, slaughtering Nirankaris, slaughtering Deras as heretics. They dress up caste oppression as religious heresy, a fight against religious heresy. Remember, Bindranwale started his career by killing off the Dera chief. The actual man who killed off the Dera chief was made the Jathedar of the Akal Takht later on. So this has been a plan that has been in the making for a very long time. And mark my words, Bindranwale became a big man when Indira Gandhi let the rule of law be damned when it came to dealing with Bindranwale. Today, Modi has unleashed the second wave of terrorism in Punjab because he has done exactly what Indira Gandhi did with Bindranwale. He has empowered these Jat Sikhs, the Akalis, well, the Takht, not the Akali Dal in that sense. And India is going to pick up the tab for this. Uh, every so-called civil society activist knows now exactly how to bring down this government. They were waiting for this opportunity. They went on snapping at the heels. Today was the bull shark snapping off the entire leg, and now that blood is in the water, they're going to come like a pack of sharks for you. Every Kashmiri now knows what to do, that they only need to put women and children in the front of their stone pelters, and they will get away with it. The narrative machine is so strong, the goofs in the PMO running the narrative are so weak, pathetic, and useless. They haven't been able to get ahead of a single narrative ever. Because they're your typical Mofusil vernacular kinds who can't even understand nuance, leave alone anything else. Just like Sir's degree in all of political science types. And this is what is going to end up happening. They're going to capture the narrative, they're going to end up capturing the streets, and that is exactly what is going to happen. Are they going to win electoral rewards? Yes. UP, they're going to win a majority. In Punjab, they've reinforced the Jat Sikh vote behind Amrinder Singh. So he's going to very successfully undermine the Congress party out there. But what's going to end up happening is India picks up the tab for the BJP's electoral success. This isn't about India, this is about the BJP. Today was the day that Modi values himself and the BJP over the rest of India.
Okay, Rajeev, you were shaking your head, and you shared a piece also today, wherein you spoke about. First of all, welcome for the first time to our channel. Gosh, it's been such a hectic day. I forgot to welcome you, and I hope you have a good time.
Hi, thank you, Advaita, for inviting me. Thank you very much.
And just dive right in. You were shaking your head when Abhijit was speaking. You seem to believe that national security does expect a certain price. I'm paraphrasing here, of course, and one of those is, in this case, has been the reform. So would you, and of course, everybody knows Rajeev is a numbers man, economist, deals a lot with the economy and that aspect of governance. So please go ahead, Rajeev.
No, so my point that I made earlier, Advaita, was simple. That the kind of reforms that we have seen in the last 2 years, I think partially the pace got a fillip when there was an external threat from the Chinese conflict. Now, I think the kind of connections and links that are being unearthed, and Abhijit did refer to some of them, relating to the farm laws and the protests and all the elements that are connected with those protests.
Right.
So what that has unearthed, I think, in the last probably 6 to 12 months, as the government has gone about trying to build a consensus on implementation and so on, probably it has given the government a pause that maybe it is not worth pushing through at this point. And it's a purely political decision. This is undoubtedly kind of a step backward for economic reforms. But it's a political call that the Prime Minister has made, that it's not worth pushing ahead given what else is at stake. Now, what else is, we can only hear off in drips and drabs here and there.
Right.
I was just reading earlier today, a column by a senior journalist who was pointing out that the political economy of the funding of gurudwaras and how it is connected to sort of the farm economy, the subsidies thereof, and the gurudwaras are drawing money from that. Thus, it was kind of inevitable that there would be a serious protest if that was touched, if the position of gurudwaras was disturbed, and that is how it has played out. So maybe the government doesn't want to open another front while it is already sort of facing off against China, while Kashmir too is still stabilizing. Maybe they decided it's not worth opening another front, but there's no doubt that this is a setback for economic reforms.
It is definitely a setback, no doubt about that. And Sushant has joined us as well. Thanks, Sushant. He's a surprise guest. I had invited him earlier, but he was busy. But then he saw Abhijit speak and disagreed with him. So he says, I disagree with Abhijit. I need to come on. But before you, Sushant, I need to welcome another first timer on Kahali, which is MRV, who is usually on primetime debates, but decided to grace us with his presence today. Thank you so much. And go ahead, Emma. We'll get your inputs in, and then Sushant can demolish all of those.
Okay. No, I
Thank
largely
you.
agree with what Abhijit said, but there's only one point of disagreement. But
Okay.
MR, please go ahead.
Okay. Thanks, Sushant, and thanks, Advaita. I'm sorry, several times you had invited me, and I could not make it. And as luck would have it, I was traveling on those days. Never by design, probably by default. Uh, I'm very happy to be here on this occasion. And today would mark a very sorry day in our republic's history. It's a buckling state. And what we have been told is arsonists, anarchists, lumpen elements on the street will decide the fate of a particular law. Whether they like it or not, they will decide it, and the parliament can go to hell. Legislature can fly kites. The Supreme Court, which in all its wisdom never says any law, because the constitutionality is always presumed when a law is passed by the parliament, had taken an exceptional route of even staying the laws for 2 years. And despite it, the state today buckled. When I say the state, I don't only mean Narendra Modi. I don't want to put it on the head of one person or one institution. It is the entire capitulation of the mechanism or the state mechanism apparatus, and it's a very serious thing that has happened. I see a pattern. I see a pattern in Kudangulam. I see a pattern in Jallikattu. I see a pattern in CAA. I see a pattern in farm laws that we will decide, we the minority, we the small handful of lumpen elements, of course, linked to the global left, of course, having tactical support with the urban Naxals, the set of media, will decide what is best for India and what is best for us. So, unfortunate that the state, despite all the tall talks that it has done, unfortunately has capitulated. Now, the spin masters have spun a beautiful story that it is because of the Khalistanis. I'm sorry, Khalistanis need not be treated by withdrawing the farm laws. If you have a problem with Khalistanis, you have secessionist laws, you have the laws on through the National Security Act and so on and so forth. You can deal with them in a manner known to law, but not by withdrawing 3 farm laws. Are you now suggesting that these formulas means that Khalistan problem is over from 9:30 a.m. this morning? And God forbid, we had a prime minister who went to Canada. We had the prime minister of Canada, coming in Air India along with the prime minister. And nobody is holding the foreign ministry accountable for Khalistanis to proliferate for such a long period of time. And where is the success of the foreign policy for Khalistanis? If Khalistani bogie is being raised, they are damned. Now, if the other thing is that no, look at it, what the Prime Minister said in the fact, and he says, I brought the law for the farmers, I'm withdrawing it for the nation. If this is another spin that is going on, that there will be a master stroke, that it will be, if the master stroke comes in, and what has happened in the chess parlance is he has sacrificed the queen and he has paid a very huge price. Now he has to go for the juggler and get the king, the opposite king. If he doesn't get it, Narendra Modi will be short of political capital at the end of the day. And I have never seen him, come what may, lose political capital one wee bit. I think the Prime Minister has a mindset by which probably every night before he goes to bed, calculates whether he has got one vote at least incremental on that particular day or not. Every day he thinks at least he must have one incremental vote. Now, by repealing or promising to repeal the farm laws, the Prime Minister has probably put his political capital on the boil. That's a very serious issue. I think one is, of course, the credibility of the state. One is, of course, the political capital of the Prime Minister. I'm really appalled that the Prime Minister's advisor has chosen to advise him this way. And if they have done it, unless there is some reversal quick and fast, I am sorry to say that this will be a very, very big tipping point for the Prime Minister. Let us make no bones about it. This is going to be a very big tipping point. And lastly, which is a very important thing that I would like to say, which is connected to this point, is that the Prime Minister is also a political animal. He is an out and out political animal. He may not be a person who is absolutely on top of economics or something else. But on politics, his politics has been spectacular insofar as the electoral politics is concerned. He has never seen a defeat electorally in the last 20 years. So probably there is a calculation inbuilt in all these things. But as I said, unless that manifests in the next couple of days, few weeks, it is going to be very difficult for the prime minister, because this time he is playing the Queen's Gambit, and the Queen's Gambit is too dangerous.
Right. And Sushant, I mean, you keep a close eye on security concerns. MR seems to think that this is some sort of spin that is doing the rounds, wherein it's being said that, there is the protest for a while. There was this sense that they had been hijacked by these elements, the Khalistani elements, and they were used as a means of, seeding in a certain amount of disenchantment with the state, and essentially trying to seed in Khalistani sentiment, hugely supported from the radicals in the West and things of that nature. So when the Prime Minister makes a statement which is being widely shared, that I did the farm laws for the farmers and I'm taking them back for the country, should we read between the lines? Is there something to it? Because Captain Amrinder Singh has been very clear about the fact that there is a looming crisis in Punjab when it comes to national security. We saw the face-off over the BSF, presence in the state. So I'm just going to hand this over to you. And of course, you wanted to rebut Abhijit.
Okay, sorry for butting into the program this late, but nevertheless, Abhijit always manages to provoke me and set things rolling. But okay, so 4 or 5 points. One, I think Abhijit is totally on the mark when he talks about the threat which is coming from the Khalistanis. That's a real threat. It's a growing threat. Make no mistake about it. But the thing is repealing the farm laws the best way to go about it? What is the signaling you do when you repeal something like the farm laws? And if you had to repeal it or you had to make substantive changes in it, could you not have done this better? Could you not have done this with more grace? Could you not have done this in a negotiated manner? You had enough time. You had enough leeway. At that point of time, you stood on a high horse and you were not willing to back down. And then suddenly when you back down, it is a headlong retreat. It is not even something midway, headlong. So if supposing you were one of those characters, whether a Kashmiri terrorist secessionist or one of these Khalistani types, or somebody sitting in the ISI headquarters in Rawalpindi, in Islamabad, what would you make of this situation? How would you see this play out going forward? So one is that. The second is on the political side of things, and this is my point of disagreement with Abhi when he says that it will bring them some benefit. Look, I don't see them bring any benefit except for perhaps some marginal benefits in Western UP. I don't think in Central or Eastern UP this was even an issue. Never saw any agitation out there. Never saw, maybe in places like Lakhimpur Kheri and others, which is basically Terai. Okay, and the Terai farmlands are dominated by the Jat Sikh farmer. So it is the same continuation of what you are seeing in Western UP, Punjab and Haryana coming into that area. But that's not so critical. And their numbers are not so big. They're powerful, they're influential, all of that, but not, the numbers are minuscule. But so in UP, perhaps it'll have a marginal impact. Marginal. Otherwise, the UP dynamics is not going to change. In Punjab, I don't see how the dynamics is going to change at all. Because the people who have whipped up this sentiment and this emotion, and let us face it, what has happened in Punjab is out and out a communal polarization against on Sikh versus the rest kind of a thing. That is, you can close your eyes, you can be politically correct and say that no, this is not happening. Tragedy of this country is that the Khalistanis, uh, they're not even Sikhs anymore. Because if the Sikhs were to study their own history and study their own ethos and where they come from and the entire literature, they would understand, which Mr. Modi does, to his credit, uh, that they basically, it's the Panth is basically one of those offshoots of Hinduism. If you look at the poetry of the gurus, who the gurus used to worship, all of that. But I don't want to get distracted by that debate right now. But to Mr. Modi's credit, unlike other politicians like Mrs. Gandhi or Pandit Nehru or any of the others, even I.K. Gujral, uh, who would pay obeisance at the Sikh Panth out of political compulsion or political necessity, or out because they wanted to, do some political grandstanding. Modi is the kind of a guy who actually ideologically and spiritually connects with the Panth. I have not seen a more a prime minister who is more admiring of the Sikh Panth than Mr. Modi. And this is the travesty, that this man is being given the boot by the Sikh community. I, I find it difficult to get my head around that. So that is one part of it. And I don't think that dynamic and what has happened over the last 1 year or so in Punjab is going to change virtually overnight in the next couple of months before elections are going to be held. So out there, I have my disagreement with what Abhijit was saying. Third, in Punjab, there is a major political churning taking place. The Congress played a very smart card by sidelining Sidhu, not entirely, but bringing in somebody like a Channi. Okay, Punjab has almost 30 to 33% what is called the Mazbi or the scheduled caste vote. It is the highest in the country. You add the backward element to it, and this number goes over 50%. You throw in the smattering of the Hindus and others, you are talking about something like 75%. The Jat Sikhs are only about 18 to 20%. They're powerful, they're influential, they hold the land, they control many of the levers of power. But when you have a vote of almost 60 to 70% arraigned against that, even if it gets split somewhat, I think it's a very powerful vote. And that change is coming in Punjab. Okay? And you need to be mindful of that. And that is going to have its own impact and repercussions and everything. But that's for the future. The other point I wanted to make was on what a joint issue with my friend MR, when he talks about Mr. Modi expending his political capital. Unfortunately, in the rest of the country, and I'm not talking about Punjab and other places, but in the rest of the country, the guys who hate him will continue to hate him. If MR is now talking about that he's really pissed off with what has happened today, or Abhi is, I want to ask them, if tomorrow elections are going to be held, they'll vote. Who will they vote for in the national election? रो पिट के तुम वहीं पे जाओगे यार, because you'll say, yaar, what am I going to vote for the Congress? But look, the Congress has played a very dubious role. What is the big idea that the Congress party is coming with, etc., etc. Is somebody going to go and vote for Mamata Banerjee? Maybe in Bengal, yes. But anywhere else. So I think the basic core constituency stays pretty much intact. And to that extent, Mr. Modi calculates that, look, जो मेरे साथ है वो तो मेरे साथ है, he is not going anywhere. जो हमारे जैसे कुछ लोग जो हैं, जो आपके अभी शो पे बैठे हुए हैं, some of us might even move away, but we don't count for shit, yeah. Come on.
Yeah.
Right? They don't care. So it's okay. So I don't see him losing any political capital. But finally, my biggest grouse is that, look, if you're bringing in a legislation which is as sweeping as these farm laws were, then should you ram these through the way you did? Okay, you had the numbers and you could do it. But should that have been done? Okay, fine, you did it. Then there was a reaction. Maybe you should have woken up at that point of time. You held half-hearted talks. And then when you back down so completely कि कुछ छोड़ा ही नहीं यार. And look at the narrative today. Look at a guy like this fellow Taket. जो टके का, he was not worth a taka यार. You made him into a hero.
He's still going to protest, he's saying.
No, he's still. Why will he not? You tell me this. Why will he not? When he sees that the government has, this is, when wars happen, since we are talking about this area, when wars happen, the moment the army starts running back in headlong flight, the other guy would be stupid to say, okay, fine, I won, I'm not going to go after them. The armies of people like Temur and people like this fellow Changiz Khan and all, they would actually chase the buggers and kill everybody. You think these guys are going to stop now? They've smelled blood. They've realized that these guys are weak. Look at everything which is coming out from the opposition ranks. There is nobody saying that, yes, thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, you have done this. We accept this with grace, and we should talk about how to move forward on farm laws or the farm economics, agri-economics in this country. Nobody's saying that. Now they are saying that you bloody well will give us MSP, make it a statutory right. I say yes, make it a statutory right. But then if Abhi and I put up a Golgappa stall tomorrow, then I should have a statutory rate of return on my investment on Golgappa stall. Why not? MR Venkatesh will open a idli and dosa stall, right? So give him a 10 or 15 or 20%, or in the farmer case, you are saying 50% or 100% over your investment. तो भाई मैं अपनी इन्वेस्टमेंट कर रहा हूँ रोज की 10,000 रुपए, तो आप मुझे रोज का 20,000 रुपए दो. How is it right to assure this to the farmer, but not to a guy who's selling idli or selling tiffins or selling golgappa or selling something else, has a lathe machine? Why are you not giving him an assured rate of return? तो आपने कोई social protection नहीं बनाई.
Right, and we should get Rajeev in on this point also. I think he's not here right now, but as soon as he gets back, maybe on call.
I have to get going.
Here, he doesn't want to be associated with us, so he hides himself.
Asha, I have to get going,
I was
guys.
just having my dinner
Okay,
actually,
so
so
Abhijit,
that's
Don't go, yaar. Listen, 1 second, Rajeev. Abhi, you are not going anywhere right now. Just shut
Yeah,
up.
you're not going
I'm
anywhere.
following
else.
you.
dinner हो गया, मैं dinner कर रहा था.
अबे यार, okay, ठीक है, I'm not going.
Acha, oh dear, he's listening to you, Sushant. Oh, I see.
Yeah, I'm
Nobody
very scared of
cares from here.
Sushant.
Noted.
He's an evil homophobe who keeps bashing me up and things like that. So I'm
Yeah.
terrified of him.
Yeah.
Keep
All of
out,
that
no?
I'll take from you, but you bloody well stay here now.
ठीक है.
Yes, Rajeev, go ahead, please. We ventured into your area.
No, I mean, I completely agree with Sushant, right? So this whole business of guaranteed sort of payouts, tax-free income, how many farmers are there in this country who are earning sort of in crores and are yet not paying any income tax? How long can this go on? There is not
Money
even any
laundering scheme, yeah.
there is not even any honest debate happening on this point. That, there are rich farmers who are earning in crores, some of them in tens of crores, and the entire sum is tax-free. It is people like us who are actually subsidizing such farmers. And then, they are being glorified, romanticized in different ways in the media, by certain vested Andolan GVs, as the Prime Minister called that group. And there is just no end to it. I mean, there needs to be an honest debate in this country on whether farming is a business or whether farming should just be kind of treated as like a activity where there's a free pass and whoever does it will be coddled by the state in every way, shape and form possible, where you are given guaranteed sort of purchasing, you are given tax-free sort of income. I mean, who has that status? Nobody has that status in the country. We are all obligated to pay our taxes except farmers. and frankly, that is simply unacceptable going forward.
There was one comment that I read. I can't recall who it came from, but they said that we've lost about 25 years of reforms, of agricultural reforms, with this rollback, and of course political capital in terms of how decisions are going to be taken, and as MR says, the majesty of the state, how it's upheld, is going to be another kind of blow that India will pick up the tab on.
No, and I will also say, Advaita, that see, when we look at other kinds of big reforms that have recently happened, government is pushing forward with asset monetization, where they are kind of collating and putting all, let's say, land assets into a separate agency, going to sell those assets. Privatization is happening. Air India has been privatized, will be sort of handed over to the Tata Group soon. So when those kind of actions are happening, we are not seeing that kind of angry pushback, right? There's no sort of serious kind of pushback like that happening from anywhere. And why is that the case? I would suggest that is the case because for many years the intellectual case has been made. The people have been arguing why this should be done. Whereas in the case of farm laws, I would say that there's hardly any voices in the country who have been making this case. And somewhere the intellectual class, the analysts, the researchers, the sort of thinking sort of people need to raise this issue more often as to why agriculture reforms are necessary, or in other domains too. Why these reforms are important, whom do they help? So it's always risky when the government is sort of pushing ahead with a reform, and then where is the intellectual case to sort of back it up? The intellectual case should be made beforehand. Only then the reform is sustainable.
MRV, there's a news update on the farm laws being repealed. Narendra Singh Tomar has said that pained we failed to explain benefits to some farmers. This kind of leads into what Rajeev is also saying. One aspect is, of course, the intellectual case that is to be made. And then the other aspect of it is the communication aspect. Do you think the government has failed on both these fronts?
Miserably. No doubt about it. Take this, again, I'm using the word spin very advisedly. That was given that, look, direct benefit transfers are happening. Farmers' income has gone up after the farm laws. Farmers are happy. Now, who said this? Finance Ministry, Agriculture Ministry, the spokesperson of the BJP were all tom-tomming about how the farmers were lapping on the farm laws. One. Number two, very importantly, when I did my doctoral thesis on farm incomes and subsidies, I took 2 districts in Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, and Karnataka for study. The 2 districts were Tanjavur and Tiruvallur, which were the most agri-density districts in Tamil Nadu. Now, in Tamil Nadu, 20% of the farmers would understand what is MSP. Please understand, MSP is a Punjab-Haryana phenomenon. Because the productivity of farms, rice and wheat paddy and wheat is very high here. You have surplus production. And when Green Revolution was ushered into these 2 states, then the states had come up with a question, what will happen to the abundance that will come about? Who will buy it? Then the government gave a promise that, look, even if you have an abundant produce, because you are using these pesticides and fertilizers and modern techniques, we, the state, will buy, and that's how FCI came in. That's how the whole purchase of farms started with a minimum guaranteed or minimum support price. Then you had on top of it this ration shops coming and distributing it through the whole process. So it was brick by brick. It was not one piece of construction. You constructed one idea, then you said, oh, what will happen to this? It went to this idea. A state like, say, Andhra Pradesh, a state like, say, Tamil Nadu, a state like Telangana, all these states, major districts, if you go to West Godavari, which is one of the most fertile places to get paddy, farmers were 32% were only bothered about MSP. Now, that's why I said, those farmers want the input subsidy. Those farmers want free electricity, free pesticides, free loans. They don't care about your MSP. MSP, when I again to use my phrase, MSP is like this. You have some athlete in India, she or he may be doing great. We don't care. But she wins an Olympic bronze, then everybody will dump BMWs and cars and bicycles and everything. Till that time, nobody is bothered. MSP is like that. The farmer has a billion problems till he reaches the farm gate. After he reaches the farm gate, the government says, no, I will not pay you 1,500, I pay you 1,600, 1,600, 1,700. So this is a very big issue when you go and talk to the farmers in many parts, probably even Bengal, Bihar, as Sushant was alluding, even parts of Uttar Pradesh on the eastern side, Purvanchal and the other side, they care a rat about this MSP business. So this farm laws, which begins with MSP, has no bearing. That is why I am very surprised for a few districts or couple of states in these two states. The prime minister had to eat the humble pie politically, and he put the majesty of the state on the boil. This, I think, was unwarranted. I think that this is nothing to do with Narendra Modi. Yes, as Sushant says, probably all of us have to go to the voting booth and say Narendra Modi the only choice. That is a different thing. We are not into the electoral mode. But I am only talking about. But when I say this, I would also look around in the voting booth and say, कोई 57 inch का बंदा तो नहीं है जिसको मैं वोट दे दूं. So you are now looking at this alternative also, that the political capital of this prime minister has definitely been dented today. And I also said with this hope that he will correct the damage shortly. This is a queen's gambit that he has played. It is a very risky thing.
Of it as well. It wouldn't have dragged on for so long and then reached this conclusion had there not been a compelling reason. And I think we have to kind of wait to see which side the chips fall. Abhijit, this I asked MRV this before we even started. This was a law is already in abeyance because of the Supreme Court. So the repeal really is happening of a law that has not essentially been enacted. What does that augur for in terms of the political statement that is being made by the Prime Minister by repealing this? Some people are saying, of course, it's with an eye on UP and Punjab. UP, like Sushant rightly pointed out, and I've certainly noticed that in my trips there, this is really a non-issue. And it's mostly in the western UP region, where a lot of the farmers who are, by the way, Modi voters, who have said that, look, we have no problem with Modi, he just needs to take this law back and we're all good. They've literally said that. So what do you say?
Look, out of 36 states and union territories, only 1.25, that is to say Punjab, because of the nature of the Punjab economy. Remember, Punjab, because of militancy, missed out on the industrialization wave that hit all the other, because of the 1991 reforms by Narasimha Rao. They missed out on that industrialization and the creation of a huge middle.
And let me take this question to you then. Same question, really. I mean, this is is this a somewhat political posturing because
Sorry,
Supreme Court?
Sorry, I got cut off. Sorry.
Oh yeah, he is. He's back. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So what happened was that basically this entire thing, Punjab remained a economy that was a natural progression from the 1980s Indira Gandhi reforms, which seemed to have developed in a kind of a time zone that was completely separate from the rest of India that had benefited from Narasimha Rao's reforms. Okay, so this was a kind of a parallel trajectory, and it was the only state, plus the sort of the dependence here and there. For example, the few Sikhs in the Tarai region and the few Sikhs in Haryana who were benefiting from this entire setup. So when you say that this was somehow this was done for the nation, it actually flushed the rest of the nation down the drain for this 1.25 set of so-called farmers. And mind you, these were not farmers. When we did satellite analysis of all these so-called protests, allowing for a density of between 4 to 7 per tent. We found that even at its peak, it was about 50,000 regularly, maximum between 30 to 50,000. At absolute peak, when they managed to coalesce in numbers, they used to go up to approximately around 200,000 on 1 or 2 days. That was it. Okay. So, for the sake of these people, virtually every other farmer in India has been thrown under the truck. Not a good thing. Second, I just want to address this issue of media management. Okay. Because this government has failed so spectacularly in media management across the board, be it on Rafale, be it on foreign policy, be it on cattle lynching, be it on on religious tolerance, whatever. They have always been on the back foot. At some point, the Prime Minister has to sit and do an audit of the clowns in his office running media management. Because, there has to be, he's running his own media section the way the IAS runs policy. Zero accountability, promotion for everybody. It's like a living joke out of yes minister, yes prime minister. And mind you, sir, Humphrey Appleby at least had a way with words and spin. These guys don't even have that. So if you're sitting on such a huge budget, such a huge media budget, which at the time of election you're willing to buy front page newspaper headlines on every single newspaper that abuses you 365 days a week, and you still can't manage the narrative. अरे अगर नैरेटिव मैनेज नहीं कर सकते हो, खुद अपने वर्कर्स वेस्ट बंगाल और केरला की देखभाल नहीं कर सकते हो, you're willing to throw all the other farmers down the drain for 1.25 states. क्या सुरक्षा करोगे? क्या मीडिया मैनेजमेंट करोगे? And now, because, like I said, the sharks have smelt the blood in the water. They are all going to congregate. The next 2-3 years, till the 2024 general election, are going to be a nightmare for all of us. Because the NGOs now know how to use their money. They are all going to come out like, what have you, bull sharks, tiger sharks, great white sharks, vultures, whatever, when they see carrion. And they are going to turn our lives into a living hell for the next 3 years.
Abhijit, that's why I said, whether it was Shaheen Bagh or whether it was Kudangulam or whether it was Jallikattu, all these were trial runs, trial balloons being floated. The net practice was going on. Then they are gone in for the jugular. For some, this what was happening in remote Tamil Nadu or in remote Punjab was not something that was having a global sutradhar. There was a global sutradhar, and they were the global left that were trying to destabilize this government. This government did not see it till this morning. That is what is worrying me. To have a host of laws, and I think Sushant was spot on when he said that, look, by withdrawing farm laws, you can't stop or stall the Khalistani movement. You have a whole set of agencies, whole set of laws, whole sets of apparatus to look into that. If you are going to look into the Khalistani with by repealing your farm laws, I think you are eating rasam with a fork and knife.
That is some analogy. Eating rasam with a fork and knife. Sushant, loving
By
it.
the way, people like Sushant Sareen will eat rasam with fork and knife.
They do, right? Yeah. I've heard that as well.
Yeah, they do.
Sushant, you're on mute. Please unmute yourself. Wait, I'm
Yeah, so
Don't
Abhi
unmute
is just
him.
getting back at me because he hasn't got his mutton sandwiches. He's got his mutton sandwiches. Hasn't got his mutton sandwiches rather. So look, here's the thing. Look, Abhi is absolutely right. These guys, their economics is 70s style, and the media management is also 70s style. Okay, the way media narratives are built and changed, and I find this surprising because when these guys were fighting the elections, at least 2014, maybe perhaps not so much 2019, others had also kind of woken up to the power of how narratives are to be created. But look at the way they managed and built a narrative around themselves in 2014. Okay, Congress party helped them hell of a lot, right? With all their scams and other things. But look at the way they built that narrative. It was so effective. The problem, however, is that they haven't understood that it is one thing to build a narrative going into an election. It is quite to create a narrative when you are governing a country, and a country as complex and as diverse as India. They simply do not understand that. एक तो वैसे भी अगर आप सरकारी बाबू से एक्सपेक्ट करते हो कि वो आपका मीडिया नैरेटिव बनाएगा, अनलेस ही इज रियली एक्सेप्शनल, इट्स नॉट पॉसिबल. बिकॉज सरकारी बाबू का ये होता है कि यार, अब मैं अगर सपोजिंग पैसा दे रहा हूं आपको, तो आपने वही लिखना है जो मैं आपको बोलूंगा. अगर आपने वही लिखना है जो उसने बोलना है, तो मतलब कि आप यू डोंट हैव अ नैरेटिव. You can't create a narrative. Okay, so these guys have absolutely no idea how to counter a narrative, how to look. Let me give you an example. Yeah, I don't want to praise this guy because he'll just go crazy. My friend Abhijit, on the Rafale, with all the paraphernalia which this government has, there was one guy who punctured that entire narrative. He's sitting out here. On a number of other such issues, there were just these people who came up, who are not attached to this government, who are independent people, who are policy analysts, who come up with, an argument which is compelling. The government, with all the papers they have, with everything they have, they simply cannot do it. They simply do not have the ability to, what Abhi did, for example, with that almost fake news kind of a thing by the Hindu, where they chopped off certain things to present a certain line. Abhi came up with it, right? Should the government not have come up with it? Should they not have developed those capacities? And forget it, it's not just about politics right now. It's about strategic communication. When you are facing off the Chinese, for example, you're facing off the Pakistanis, you're facing off all kinds of hostile propaganda from the rest of the world. Should you not develop those capabilities? You used to do that in the 50s, 60s, 70s, when you had these monitoring stations, and then you had these all India radio in diverse languages broadcasting. But that was then. Today, it's a different technology, it's a different way of doing it.
Yeah.
And they still have not woken up to it. It's still that Babu who's doing it, who cannot manage it. So that is a glaring failure of this government. For the agriculture ministers who say कि हम ये बोल नहीं पाए भाई, हम बता नहीं पाए लोगों को, right? But how can you even say that? This is your job. You claim to be the largest political party in the world. You have virtually a member in every goddamn family of this country, yaar, from what the numbers you tell me, right?
Yeah.
And you still can't sell a narrative. You still don't have a system whereby your people at the grassroots level are able to feed information up the chain of command, so that people right at the top know what somebody in some area of either Bihar or some obscure area of Madhya Pradesh or somewhere else in the country is saying. What are people talking about? What are the narratives that are being built? How are those to be addressed? Where is that narrative coming from? Should this not be the job of a political party, number one, of a government, number two? Does it take rocket science to understand this?
Yeah, viewers, please keep your questions coming. Sushant, one for you. The 2014 narrative was built by Prashant Kishore. I don't think most of us would agree with that, but nonetheless, that's the question. The win got so much in their heads that they showed him the door, intellectual harakiri. So how do you expect the culture of communication to have matured?
Yeah, look, Prashant Kishore is a smart dude, no doubt about it, okay? But to say that he is the only smart dude and he is the only guy who can, who has some kind of a cat's whiskers about him, that he's the only guy who can do this and there's nobody else. There are 500,000 people you can get here. आप ढूंढने वाले तो बनो. There are professionals who do this work. Yeah, there are professional spin doctors, professional guys who manage these things, who know how these narratives are to be built and to be worked. इसके बाद प्रशांत किशोर के पास कोई डिग्री थोड़ी है ये करने की यार. He's a smart dude, no doubt about it. And he's a politically a very savvy guy. You know, a lot of people were laughing at him when he said that BJP is not even going to get into three figures in Bengal. But he turned out to be right. So he's a guy, he's a smart dude. But there are many others. So to say that, you know, after him, the deluge, after him, they won a bigger victory in 2019. So I don't think that is. There were other areas in which he was helping parties which were routed in the election. That has also happened. He's a smart dude. He sees which party has a better chance of winning, and he also, you know, makes a sales pitch out there.
Yeah.
But having said that, I'm sure you can find other people to do this work. Yeah.
Rajiv, you know, you made that point about the intellectual argument. What about the communication strategy? You know, I mean, there is for a long time, you know, there has been this feedback that has come in from those who support the government, not those who are critics of the government, but certainly those who support the government, who are saying, you know, build an ecosystem where intellectual thought, think tanks, those kind of things, analysis are supported and promoted. Focus on your communication strategies. None of that seems to be really hitting home.
No, I mean, see, this is a never-ending kind of bugbear, right? That communication is not good enough, and I agree with some of the points that Sushant made. I think Abhijit is being very harsh, but generally, I think obviously one can always do better. But let's not get into that. I would like to bring the discussion back to the specific farm laws, and in particular, the what we saw with the highest court of the country inserting itself into the process. Now, we have all just kind of internalized that this is fine and this happens in India. But should this be happening in India, where the Supreme Court can, jump into the scene and, form a committee, quote unquote, which will review what the parliament has done? I mean, to what extent can a court be doing that? How is that legitimate? And who will hold them to account? If the executive does that, then immediately the executive will be accused of suppressing the independence of the judiciary. The media more or less plays along with what the judiciary is doing, because the media and certain elites only get their power by playing well with the judges. So I think this is going to be a bigger and bigger issue in the country, where as we get into more contentious reforms, we will see.
Rajeev, if I can ask you a question.
Yeah.
What you are saying, the principle of it is unexceptionable, completely. But isn't it the government's job to address these issues on its own? The government first throws the ball into the court of the Supreme Court or any judiciary.
Exactly.
And then you say that why is the judiciary interfering? Bhai, aap khud karo na. Incidentally, Abhi, in the Spaces thing today, you spoke about the Land Acquisition Act. There was another thing on which this government backed down. A very, very sensible move they had done.
Yes.
The National Judicial Commission.
Yes.
For appointing judges.
Yes.
No, but
And
Sushant, the NJAC was struck down by the Supreme Court itself. The government didn't back down. There's a difference. The Supreme Court has struck it down.
That in itself was a violation of the basic structure of the Constitution.
So what is the basic structure?
Rajiv, understand when you
What is the basic structure? We don't know the
argument.
judges wake up on some day and that is the basic structure.
So therein exactly that is the point. At some point, the government had to come out and clarify and say that we can't accept the legislature is kept in check by the people every 5 years. The military is kept in check by the executive. The executive is kept in check by the legislature. That is how checks and balances work. Today, your judiciary is kept in check by nobody. It is self-electing, self-appointing. That in itself is a violation. The government should have come out and been very clear about that. Mind you, when the NJAC was struck down, there was only one paragraph in it which the Supreme Court said was unconstitutional. You could have promulgated it without that. But no, they have been outsourcing governance to the Supreme Court. Everything is sent off to the Supreme Court. CANRC sent off to the Supreme Court, even though it was Gogoi who wanted it done in Assam. He was the one who had passed the entire thing that it should be done in Assam. हर चीज पे सुप्रीम कोर्ट. You know where the pollution is coming from, but you don't want to deal it, and you want to. This is the worst kind of abdication of executive and legislative prerogative down to the Supreme Court. And see, the problem here is the way institutional relationships work is once one institution senses that the other institution is weak and is passing the buck onto the other thing, they get into everything. Now, remember the last time this happened was T.N. Seshan and the Election Commission of India, and remember how the Congress fixed him. They appointed 2 more election commissions to override and veto him when required. What you need today is to appoint another 48 judges to the Supreme Court and decide amongst them who is going to be the next Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and completely void the entire process.
Rajiv, go ahead. You had
So
something
there are
to say.
101 ways. The problem with the BJP is they do not have the tactical finesse and the government finesse to do this, and the people that they depend on are all Congresi darbaris. The clearest sign of that has been all the retirees who write these open letters, who were all incidentally rewarded by the BJP one way or other, and the biggest of them, all of them, was Jawahar Sarkar today. Okay, this is a government that can't tell enemy from friend. अगर तुम आके गवर्नमेंट का मदद करो, ये तुम्हारा सौभाग्य है कि तुमने मेरा मदद किया, क्योंकि मैं विष्णु का 10वां अवतार हूं. ठीक है. और जो तुम्हारी मदद करते हैं, यू स्पिट ऑन देम. Those who spit on your face, you respect them and say, अरे मैं आपकी क्या खिदमत कर सकता हूँ साहेब, आपका जूता साफ कर दूं, आपका ये पान ले आऊं, कुल्फी ले आऊं, तंदूरी चिकन ले आऊं. तो अगर ऐसे ही सरकार चलाना है, look, this is the worst. This is, you know what Talleyrand used to say. This is worse than a crime. It's a blunder. The more and more you see the BJP government in action, you understand what Napoleon was saying, what Talleyrand was saying about Napoleon. They are not criminals, they are klutzes. And in politics, to be a klutz is a death penalty.
Go ahead, Rajiv. You
Acha, now I have to go.
Okay, 1 second.
So, Jai Shri Ram.
Sushant, can you go?
I don't know about specific solutions to this. You know, when if you try to bring a solution, the court can strike it down, saying the solution is violating the basic structure. So everything and anything can be claimed to be violating the basic structure in the wisdom of the judiciary. So how do you spell the cat? I think anyone who takes it on will basically precipitate a constitutional crisis.
Rajiv, did the Congress government refuse to implement the NRC judgment of the Supreme Court? How come there was no constitutional crisis then? Did they not defy the Supreme Court judgment on Assam?
I'm not suggesting that this problem should not be. My limited point is,
look, for institutions to work together, I think it is for all institutions to realize that to not encroach on the domain of the other institution.
Correct.
But if that is going to happen, then I think maybe at certain times, then you have to dig in your heels and say, okay, fine, sorry, man, no go out here. If there's going to be this logjam, then let it stay. But then, in order to be able to do it, because you know your enemies are arraying against you, then you must make sure that you have worked out the politics of it. कि अगर जुडिशरी के साथ पंगा लेना था तो वकीलों को अपने साथ करो. You know, सारा माहौल बनाओ उसके लिए. ये तो नहीं हो सकता ना कि one fine day you suddenly get up and you decide क्या. Again, last time in the Vajpayee government, more than 100 high court judges had to be appointed at that point of time. They sat on those files. They never appointed them for one reason or another. The government changed. The Congress guys came in, smart dudes here. They filled up the judiciary with their people. And then it's a self-perpetuating judiciary. Because they only now decide who is going to become the judge next time. And you can't do anything about it anymore. So कहीं पे तो आप अंकुश लगाओगे ना. What is the check and balance when it comes to selecting judges? Why should there not be a parliamentary oversight to let the Supreme Court come up with judges' names, but let there be a parliament scrutiny? वो भी नहीं है.
No, but Sushant, I think you will agree with me at least uh, that the state has buckled, which is worrying. Forget Narendra Modi may come, Narendra Modi may go, people may come, people may go. You can fix the Supreme Court, you can have a committed judiciary, you can remove them, remedy. But when the state buckles in front of anarchists, you get a feeling of, you become vacuous from inside. And that's what is worrying me. That the larger point is not any individual or even the institution. It is the state, it is the country, it is the government of India, the lion symbol and whatnot. That has been dented today. Anybody who is looking at this development in India will laughing with his pants down. In the sense, this is something that's unheard of. And you had the Prime Minister assuring all of us repeatedly that he would not back up on the farm laws. Remember this. It was the Prime Minister, no less. The talks were held by Tomars of the world, by Piyush Goyals of the world. That's all fair enough. That's your strategy. You want to keep the Prime Minister insulated. You wanted to do that. That's all fine. But the Prime Minister has come up on record several times. Press reported that he would not buckle, he would not turn back the farm laws, and that is what he does it today. So, what happens tomorrow if they buckle on something else? That's the worry. And this motley crowd of anarchists have tasted blood. And to use the phrase of Abhijit, it is the sharks that are going to come about in packs and hunt you. And this is something worrying me.
No, you're right, because this template has been created, and there will be others who will be tempted to try this out. Secondly, I sometimes wonder that when this whole agitation started and these guys came to the Delhi border, I just sometimes, maybe I'm completely talking, nonsense. But if one of those days when these guys had come and, shor war mach raha tha, the Prime Minister suddenly decided that he'll go and sit out there and say, yaar, batao, kya problem kya hai? Use his political capital, use his charisma, use everything and say, yaar, tell me what, I'm doing this for the farmers. You tell me what is your problem. Let us see if we can find a way around.
And
why said he could have done it. He could have tried it out, right?
Yeah, Sushant, one more thing. Just as I said, the whole of East Coast and interior India, the farmers, which must be the 90% of the farmers, have not even bothered about these farm laws either ways. I'm saying they are neutral towards it. Now, you should have mobilized those farmers, and if the intended benefits are actually reached them, which is what the spin that was being given out by the government. And if I had seen in the last 1 year that the farmers have started paying me dividends as a farmer, you should have mobilized in various places in capital saying that I want these farm laws. Unfortunately,
but they rendered those farm laws ineffective.
No. The point here is BJP doesn't have statewide farm leaders also. Now, this would not have been the style of, say, a Vajpayee, who would have somehow or the other managed to dialogue with various leaders, bring them, talk to them, discuss with them. This dialogue with various, farmers across the state or across the country is totally absent. Farmers do not mean Punjab farmers alone. There is a whole range of farmers, the whole of the country, of various hues, of various sizes and various tastes and preferences. Unfortunately, this has not been leveraged. So you just abdicate.
MR, what they did was they put the laws in abeyance.
Please.
So, वहाँ पर implement कहाँ करते वो law को? How could the laws have operated in those areas where they'd already declared that these laws are put in the cold storage for an year or a year and a half? So it didn't make sense. I agree with what you are saying, that you should have shown how these laws are working in practice. But
no. Sushant, the larger point I'm driving out is a counter narrative from the government with the help of its own farmer base was totally absent.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think he's frozen. He's frozen. But coming back to the subject,
certainly there was a constituency of farmers that were for it, but we never heard from them. For sure,
we never heard from them. Yeah,
because they were not organized, they were not funded, they were not having the media access, and it was for the BJP to have provided all this. It was for the BJP's, and see the problem with the BJP, it has become a moribund party in all states. This is what will happen when you depend too heavily on the top two, and you don't want the middle order to be there, and the first two top two get out in the first 2 overs. Then the whole batting line collapses like the cycle stand in Patiala cinema stall, as Sidhu would say. Everybody else collapses. There is nobody to hold on and say, we will do this. So none of the chief ministers, you have never seen a counter blast to this narrative. And that is what is worrying me. There is a structural weakness also within the BJP today. That also comes to the fore.
Yeah, that's right, because they've all outsourced it to the top two guys. And everybody thinks, yeah, हमारे को तो वोट ये जाएंगे तो हमारे को वोट मिल जाएगा तो even a lamppost will get a
My
vote.
job is to say, under the able leadership of the Prime Minister, today it has rained in Chennai.
They don't open their mouth before first 5 minutes lauding the virtues of the Prime Minister.
And no accountability.
Why the psychophancy? Why the psychophancy?
And all of you guys were laughing at the ministers in the Jayalalitha cabinet. Now the curse is on you. Karma is a 5-letter word.
No one can match.
I think both these, so both this aspect, as not being able to mobilize the voices that were in favor of the farm laws, and sort of there being an intellectual gap, making the policy case, making the intellectual case as to why these reforms are necessary. I think both these lacuna have proved to be quite expensive.
Because this makes the very important thing that the party is moribund. It is not hitting the streets. It is only in Twitter. It is only in Facebook. It is only in social media. It doesn't even go to the studio nowadays. It is only through Skype and Zoom. घर में बैठे रहो और कुर्ता पजामा पहन लो और कुछ ज्ञान दे दो, हो गया. So this is not the way politics can be run in the street. What has happened finally? The street politics succeeded. So even today in this age of electronic media, social media, finally what succeeded is the politics at the street level. Hit your bootstraps and go to the streets. Why is it that Karnataka chief minister is silent? Madhya Pradesh ex-chief minister is silent. Madhya Pradesh, a very big agricultural state, Chhattisgarh, where you had 15 years of government. Why is all the chief ministers, ex-chief ministers silent? Why is it that Telangana, Andhra, you have not mobilized your allies and kept them quiet? And Sushant, to be very frank, there was a report by, if I remember right, there was some sort of a discussion where they said the farmers have started getting in mandis of Punjab in April and May of this year, when without the Arthyas and other brokers, the farmers are directly getting, and they are getting much bigger benefit than the MSP. This was a huge publicity blitzkrieg launched by the establishment, and that the farm laws are succeeding. Why is it that they are not bringing those farmers and saying that, look, you have got this money, you have got something out of this new farm laws? And incidentally,
like I said, Emma, it was a political failure at the end of the day.
Yes.
That
Yes.
you did not understand that if you are going to be making such a sweeping change in anything, you have to anticipate the political fallout and manage it before that fallout comes, or
Yes.
make sure that that fallout is so minimal that it doesn't even matter. But obviously they never factored that in, and
finally the
they
Prime
never
Minister-
anticipated what will happen. Now you call it a failure of intelligence, you call it a failure of intellect, you call it a failure or to anticipate what is going to happen. I think all of those factors were there. It's the same thing which happened. It's the same thing which happened with something like what do you call the CAA. They were never able to explain their position. So I think they need to understand the politics of how some of these very important laws have to be made and pushed through.
Communicated. No, absolutely. And coming back to the political fallout of this.
Acha, partner, can I now go? I'm running
Just
frightfully
wrap it
late.
up. I know you have a column to finish, but
Yeah.
very quickly on the political fallout of this, we've seen, a certain amount of triumphalism. a certain amount of caution, where people are telling opposition parties that do not kind of celebrate this too much. The reason why this succeeded was because it was apolitical. However, parties have jumped in to take the credit and things like that. I saw only Naveen Patnaik actually come out with some sort of a decent message as far as the repealing of these laws are concerned. What are we looking at going forward? We all can agree that sure, there's been some bloodletting, there's been some they've sniffed a little blood, the sharks are going to circle, etc., etc. But are benefits going to accrue to the Congress, to the Samajwadi Party, to TMC, to these different parties in around the country?
Okay, so I'll just say my last bit and then I'll
Then
just push off.
yeah, we're
So,
also done.
so,
Yeah.
so look, three things. I really wish politics was. Abhijit would have probably smashed my face if I had said it in front of him. But I really think that in many ways, politics should be, the way Naveen Patnaik does it.
I
Uh,
agree.
his principal opposition is the BJP. And yet, the way he conducts himself and the way he behaves, they have this political slugfest all the time, right? They fight against each other. And yet, you look at the way the BJD handles, its communications, its relationship with the party in the center or the party in the state, right? I really wish politics was to follow that template. Unfortunately, it's an exception, not the rule. Uh,
Hmm.
how what the fallout will be? So I think. Uh, Look, in the immediate, I think what is going to happen is that it will galvanize many of the opposition parties. It will work like a shot in the arm for many of them. But how do they manage their politics subsequently? I think the BJP has really lost ground in West Bengal, anyways. They've not been able to fight back against the pogroms of Mamata Banerjee and the way they've, the kind of fascism and massacres they've done in West Bengal. Kerala, somewhat similar. But in Punjab, I don't see this benefiting the BJP any which way. I, I, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but that's my analysis. So I don't see that work very well for them. In Western UP, I think the damage has been done. They might recover some ground in Western UP, but I think there will be a lot of galvanization going forward with the Samajwadi Party, smelling blood, then trying to
Hmm.
make common cause with, Takayat and the rest of this bunch, and trying to swing this, and then that old Jat Muslim combined coming back together and trying to remanufacture that whole thing. So I think that will have an impact on Western UP. In Haryana, again, there are no elections right now. The Dushant Chautala is sticking with these guys. He has his own challenges coming from within the family and the Congress
Yeah.
party. So maybe it might not make much difference in Haryana right now. In Rajasthan, in Madhya Pradesh, and rest of the country, it never had any resonance, this entire movement, except for
Yeah.
some farm leaders making a noise and song and dance. वो जब protest भी करते थे तो 8-10 लोग होते थे. It never made
Hmm.
any impact. So the basic impact was in Punjab, and in Punjab, I think it'll be a bit of a washout as far as the BJP is concerned. Anybody
Okay.
aligning with BJP is a kiss of death for that person.
All right. And Rajiv, same
Can I
question.
go? Can I
Yes,
go? I'm
please.
so sorry,
All
but
of you
I need to.
answer the question and you can leave.
I've answered. I've answered, so I'm
So
going.
this was the topic of the discussion. Yeah.
Thanks.
No,
Bye.
sorry,
So,
sorry. Yeah. Thank you, Sushant. So sorry,
yeah,
can you repeat the question, Advaita?
I'll just repeat the question. My question is relates to our topic today, which is the political fallout of this. So we know what this has done with the BJP. We've discussed this at length. Do you think that any benefits of this repeal are going to specifically, the Congress, the Samajwadi Party? Of course, we know to a certain extent UP is coming up, but the TMC and other parties that are eyeing now, you see this jockeying for role of main opposition in in national politics. So do you think this is going to, how are they going to use this?
Well, they've already been celebrating, right? So, I mean, many of these leaders, especially from maybe Punjab, Haryana, and those regions,
Hmm.
they're only too happy because they were indirect beneficiaries, both electorally and financially, from the political economy of agriculture, right? So they continue to line their coffers for the foreseeable future now. So they're obviously happy about that. As far as elections are concerned, I agree with Sushant. I don't know what payoff it will really have. I continue to think that this was probably not motivated by electoral reasons, because frankly, see, every year there are so many elections happening in India. You can always pin something that this has been done because of this election. So I don't really buy that line of thinking. But I do feel that the opposition would somewhere definitely feel emboldened. They will feel that they have a hook now, to counter sort of the dominance of BJP. They will say that they've found a way in a sense, or they can believe they have found a way that works, as Venkatesh was pointing out. That the street kind of protests and thuggish kind of blackmail has shown to be effective. Now let's see if it works in other contexts for other kinds of issues. But certainly in the present moment they will feel emboldened.
Right. Right. And Emma, do you agree with Sushant that this is not going to have any impact in terms of the BJP and BJP's prospects in Punjab? And leave that aside. I mean, the BJP has never been that big of a factor except for a couple of seats in Punjab. But when it comes to Captain Amrinder Singh, how is this? He's been all over the news channels. He's delighted. He's taking credit. He's saying he spoke with, the BJP, the PM, everyone who mattered about repealing these laws and then going into some sort of alliance with them. So he is really kind of being projecting himself certainly as one of the victors, of this, and architect as well, correct, of this sort of compromise. So you think it's going to help him?
See, I don't know. I'm not a great analyst of the Punjab politics and Punjab electoral politics, so I would shut my mouth and keep my wisdom to myself. But there is a larger canvas that I'm looking at, that Modi has lost his political capital. That's point number one. Sushant seems to disagree, but I would say Modi has lost his political capital. That's number one. The second one, he has to retrieve it quickly. And when you lose something so big with your own supporters, that means you have to do a high-risk operation to get it back, all of it immediately. Now, if he allows it to fester for a few weeks, people will depreciate Modi big time. So he has to retrieve it fast. So is that something big in the offing? We don't know. But he has played this gambit. He's not a novice. He knows his political chess very well. So wait for something too big to happen.
Yeah, I think we have to wait and watch.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The third thing, assuming for a moment that doesn't happen, it shows the moribund state of his party. It's absolutely not able to be politically reactive. They have not been able to counter the narrative at the street level. It's a tweet for a tweet doesn't make a party great. They have to hit the streets. They have to hit the mohallas. They have to organize. And I don't know for what reason everybody kept silent. And they left the defense to people like me and to Abhijeet in channels. And we have a limited audience. We have a limited say. So somewhere the party spokesperson and others have to go on to all parts of the country, mobilize the farmers. Fourth, then he must now learn two things: that the opposition will go for the jugular. This is going to happen. And for that, he has to now decentralize his operation. That's the larger message, I would say. He has to take his supporters, the larger Parivar organizations, which are now sulking for some reason or the other, the RSS, the Swadeshi Jagran Manch, the BMS, the BKS, which all were not aligned to his thinking. He has to take them along and now see what is the political remedial measure that he has to take. The reason for that is 40 seats in Bengal gone, 40 seats in Tamil Nadu, you're not there, 20 seats in Kerala, you're not there, you're not there in 40 seats of Telangana and Andhra put together. So 140 seats plus another 14 in Punjab. So 154 seats out of 540 seats is not up for your grabs. So you have a very limited 400 seats or 390 seats that you will have to play to hit the target of 300. So that is going to be a very big challenge for Mr. Modi. Now that he's in the third term. So you look at it from an electoral
Second term.
Third
Second term,
term.
not third. This
No,
is the
Modi's
second
third
term.
term. No, I said 2024. I'm talking about 2024.
Also, you
2024.
be back in 2024.
No, if he has to do, I say he has to hit 300 seats out of 390. It is not 543.
Yeah.
I am saying because he has, unless he does something to align with DMK, those type of big machinations happen. I see that within the extent political landscape that we are having, it is going to be very tough for him. And the problem with it is that we are staring at the abyss because the alternative is simply far too dangerous. So somehow or the other, let us pray good sense prevails. Modi somewhere or the other pulls his socks back and does something and brings it back on the rail. It is nobody's case that Modi should fail. On the contrary, the whole lamentation or whatever it is today is that the fear that Modi will fail and there could be a demonic alternative that could surface. And none of us have forgotten 2004 when we bid. And we were stunned. And believe me, there was no opposition to Vajpayee at that time, even when the votes were being counted at to 10 o'clock. And suddenly we had something called UPA coming in, and we know rest is history. So let us all, who have adult people who have lived through that 2004, repeat it again and again and again. And remember, it is your duty also to correct the BJP if the BJP is afraid. And all the efforts are only, with that particular pure intent that BJP should succeed is what we all pray, and Mr. Modi must succeed. But if this is what is going to happen, I shudder to think what will happen in 2024.
All right, and with that warning note, just want to add the Bharatiya Kisan Sangh, which is the Sangh's farmer outfit, had issued a statement today where they said that they support this repeal. However, they were dismayed by the fact that these extremist elements had come in and hijacked this protest, which again, I think is an indication of the fact that there is more to read between the lines behind this decision and what the Prime Minister said, wherein, I repeat, he said that I brought the farmers' laws in for the farmers, but I am taking them back for the country. Very, very interesting statement to make. And I think in the days to come, we'll know exactly why he said that. But thank you so much, both of you. First timers, I hope you enjoyed yourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Advaita. Yes, it was great to be on the show. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. And I kept you all for a very long time. Usually the others run away, the regulars, as you can see. But thank you. And I hope to have you back again. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And folks, please like, share, subscribe. Do like the video because then that'll get us more views on this very important discussion and perspective. And one thing that I really do like about the non-left is that its ability to introspect, to criticize, to evaluate dispassionately. And I think MRV really closed the show out on the right note. So thank you, everybody, and see you soon. Like, share, subscribe.